Now, I think you've all been waiting long enough, but in the honoured tradition, I'm going to ask my beautiful assistant to hand me the envelope for the announcement. It's called teamwork. I, Dame Cheryl Gillan, the Joint Returning Officer for the Conservative and Unionist Party leadership election, declare that the total number of eligible electors was 159,320. The turnout in the election was 87.4%. The total number of ballot papers rejected was 509. And the total number of votes given to each candidate was as follows. Jeremy Hunt, 46,656. Boris Johnson, 92,153. And therefore I give notice that Boris Johnson is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Okay, right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much, Brandon, for a fantastic, well-organised campaign. I think it did a lot of credit, as Brandon has just said, to our party, to our values, and to our ideals. But I want to begin by thanking my opponent, Jeremy. By common consent, an absolutely formidable campaigner and a great leader and a great politician. Jeremy, in the course of 20 hustings, 20 hustings or husting-style events, it was more than 3,000 miles, by the way, it was about 7,000 miles that we did crisscrossing the country. You've been friendly, you've been good-natured, you've been a font of excellent ideas, all of which I propose to steal forthwith. And above all, I want to thank our outgoing leader, Theresa May, for her extraordinary service to this party and to this country. It was a privilege. It was a privilege to serve in her cabinet and to see the passion and determination that she brought to the many causes that are her legacy, from equal pay for men and women to tackling the problems of mental health and racial discrimination in the criminal justice system. Thank you, Theresa. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you here today, and obviously everybody in the Conservative Party, for your hard work, for your campaigning, for your public spirit, and obviously for the extraordinary honour and privilege that you have just conferred on me. And I know that there will be people around the place who will question the wisdom of your decision. And there may even be some people here who still wonder quite what they have done. And I would just point out to you that, of course, no one party, no one person has a monopoly of wisdom. But if you look at the history of the last 200 years of this party's existence, you will see that it is we Conservatives who have had the best insights, I think, into human nature, and in the best insights into how to manage the jostling sets of instincts in the human heart. And time and again, it is to us that the people of this country have turned to get that balance right, between the instincts to own your own house, your own home, to earn and spend your own money, to look after your own family, good instincts, proper instincts, noble instincts, and the equally noble instinct to share and to give everyone a fair chance in life, and to look after the poorest and the neediest, and to build a great society. And on the whole, in the last 200 years, it is we Conservatives who have understood best how to encourage those instincts to work together in harmony to promote the good of the whole country. And today, at this pivotal moment in our history, we again have to reconcile two sets of instincts, two noble sets of instincts, between the deep desire for friendship and free trade and mutual support in security and defence between Britain and our European partners, and the simultaneous desire, equally deep and heartfelt, for democratic self-government in this country. And of course, there are some people who say that they're irreconcilable, and it just can't be done. And indeed, I read in my Financial Times this morning, devoted reader that I am. Seriously, it's a great British brand. I read in my Financial Times this morning that no incoming leader has ever faced such a daunting set of circumstances, it said. Well, I look at you this morning and I ask myself, do you look daunted? Do you feel daunted? I don't think you look remotely daunted to me. And I think that we know that we can do it, and that the people of this country are trusting in us to do it, and we know that we will do it. And we know the mantra of the campaign that has just gone by. In case you've forgotten it, you probably have. It is deliver Brexit, unite the country, and defeat Jeremy Corbyn. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to defeat Jeremy Corbyn. And I know some waggles already pointed out that deliver, unite and defeat was not the perfect acronym for an election campaign, since unfortunately it spells dud. But they forgot the final E, my friends, E for energize. And I say to all the doubters, dude, we are going to energize the country. We're going to get Brexit done on October the 31st. We're going to take advantage of all the opportunities that it will bring in a new spirit of can-do. And we are once again going to believe in ourselves and what we can achieve. And like some slumbering giant, we are going to rise and ping off the guy ropes of self-doubt and negativity with better education, better infrastructure, more police, fantastic full fibre broadband sprouting in every household. We are going to unite this amazing country, and we are going to take it forward. And I thank you all very much for the incredible honour that you have just done me. I will work flat out from now on with my team that I will build, I hope, in the next few days to repay your confidence. But in the meantime, the campaign is over and the work begins. Thank you all very much.
So, Boris Johnson, the new Conservative Party leader and the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, with his father, his sister and his brother there, and a warm tribute to Jeremy Hunt, the contender he beat by a vote of around 2-1 in that ballot, the result of which just announced. Not a huge surprise, and Boris Johnson outlining the three targets over the coming weeks, at least the next couple of months, and that's to bring Brexit to fruition, to unite the party, and to defeat Jeremy Corbyn. Well, let's go over to Norman Smith, who's outside the QE2. Not a great surprise. That wasn't actually vintage Boris Johnson either, was it?
No, it wasn't actually. He gave us, the usual big optimistic pitch dispelling doubt. Are you daunted? You don't look daunted, he said. But I think he's perhaps saving himself. It's not the occasion that he really wants to set out his stall. I think that will come tomorrow when we see him outside Downing Street without a lectern, apparently. He doesn't want to be encumbered by the formal trappings. He wants perhaps to roam a little bit more freely, but I think that will be the moment when he speaks to the country. Bear in mind, this was a Tory party event. He doesn't want to be just a Prime Minister of the Tory faithful. He has to energise the country, not just the Tory party. So I suspect he was deliberately just holding himself back. And we got, a fairly basic stump Boris Johnson speech. Little dig at the FT, his favourite paper, he alleges. The scale of the victory, though, that is important, I think, because this morning his team were sort of on the blower to people like me saying, no, you're quite wrong. This suggestion he might win 60% of the vote is going to be much, much closer than that. All sort of expectation management in the event. He wins with a huge, thumping great majority, which I kind of feel he always was going to win. This is a moment which, many in the Tory party have been waiting for. They have always wanted Boris Johnson as their leader. Now they have got him. He's installed with a huge mandate, and that is important because that will at least give him lift-off. He won't have to struggle and be handicapped by the fear that actually he only just squeaked across the line. The rocket boosters are on, he's off, at least for now. And that gives him the freedom to appoint the sort of cabinet he wants. And all the signs are it is not going to be a true blue Brexiteer cabinet. It will include Remainers, those who don't necessarily agree with him, and that will form part of his core initial pitch, namely unite the party, unite the country. That is going to be the key message I think we're going to hear tomorrow outside Downing Street, and then when we hear from him again on Thursday in the Commons in a statement to MPs before they go off for their long, lazy summer recess.
Norman, thank you very much. That's Norman Smith outside the QE2 Centre there, just around the corner. Well, joining me here outside the House of Parliament is Fraser Nelson, editor of The Spectator, and deputy political editor of the Sunday Times, Caroline Wheeler. Fraser, it's quite a mandate.
Oh yes, it is quite a mandate, 2/3 of Tory members. But then again, when this started, I would have thought he would have won by a larger margin, 3-1, perhaps even 4-1, given Boris's huge popularity. So we had a far bigger Conservative Party membership, 160,000 members. So perhaps there were people joining who weren't exactly signed into the Boris Johnson Brexit project, but nonetheless a decisive mandate, not quite as big as David Cameron's, but big enough to get him to number 10.
And Caroline, as he was saying in his speech, he's got 3 targets, but the unity of the party is going to be crucial.
Absolutely crucial, and of course just moments before the announcement was made that he was going to be the next Prime Minister, another minister resigned, basically citing grave concerns about the direction of travel in terms of him moving towards a no-deal Brexit. So unity is going to be absolutely pivotal for him when he has such a small majority. And we were just discussing how big that majority is. It seems to differ depending on who you speak to, whether it's 3 or 4. We've seen one MP potentially lose the whip this week. We've got a by-election in Brecon and Radnorshire. That's going to become even slimmer if they lose that.
And of course, Fraser, they'll be watching this in Brussels. And what do you think they'll read from what they've just watched?
Well, that the Conservatives got somebody who is serious about Brexit. The important thing are the resignations. Those cabinet members who didn't really want to go through Brexit are quitting one by one. So Boris Johnson's cabinet, well, unlike Theresa May's cabinet, will be united in being serious about leaving by the end of October. So they should read seriousness of intent in this, because Theresa May would still be here if the Tories weren't serious.
And Caroline, in terms of the cabinet, is it a case of he's going to have to keep his friends close, but perhaps the odd enemy closer still?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think that's going to tell us a lot about the direction of travel for the Boris administration. He's already set a kind of artificial red line by basically saying he'll only have those people serving in his cabinet who are committed to leaving on the 31st and potentially leaving with or without a deal. And that's really going to determine a lot of those posts. We've seen some former cabinet ministers and cabinet ministers go on a bit of a journey, even the likes of Amber Rudd, who was the Work and Pensions Secretary, who initially was very opposed to the idea of her serving under a Boris Johnson administration, who now seems to be suggesting that she could pivot and actually support those terms. So it'll be really interesting to see exactly who makes it into that final cut.
Fraser, it was interesting, Sir Alan Duncan yesterday trying to manoeuvre a way of getting effectively a vote of confidence in the brand new Prime Minister tomorrow. That's not going to happen. But it underlines just how fragile things are.
Yes, and just how annoyed the Tory Remainers are. I mean, to suggest a vote of no confidence in your new leader on his first day in the job is a measure of how helpful a deputy Sir Alan was when he was Boris Johnson's deputy in the Foreign Office. But also, there's going to be a very serious conflict now. But the question for Sir Alan and the other Tories is, would they be prepared to vote down a Conservative government to stop a no-deal Brexit? Because that might be the only weapon they've got at their disposal. There aren't that many parliamentary manoeuvres. Boris doesn't need Parliament's permission to proceed with no deal, but they can stop him by triggering a general election. Now, how angry are Sir Alan and the Tory Remainers? Are they angry enough to bring him down? I guess we're about to find out.
Yeah. Fraser Nelson, Caroline Wheeler, thank you both very much for joining us. Well, let's go back to the fray, back to that scene outside the QE2 conference centre. Vicky Young, our chief political correspondent, is there for us now. Vicky.
Yeah, that's right. And cabinet ministers and ministers streaming out after listening to their new leader, the man, of course, who will become Prime Minister tomorrow. I think over my shoulder there, I think that might be Andrea Leadsom. Hard to see here, but I think it is. And speaking earlier to the Conservative piece going in, I mean, they all assumed that Boris Johnson was going to win this. And it was interesting talking to one minister who has been a long-standing ally of Boris Johnson. He said, the problem here is how long can Boris Johnson's leadership last? And that is from someone who supports him, who wants him to succeed. But I think that does highlight when Boris Johnson said to that audience, are you feeling daunted? You don't look daunted to me. Well, actually, a lot of them are very daunted by the task that lays ahead for them and for him, because there is really no majority for the Conservative Party and they have this incredibly divisive Brexit issue to deal with.
Vicky Young, our chief political correspondent there outside the QE2 conference centre, as those Tory members who've been voting and watching the vote now leave, heading off to their various offices to cogitate, to wonder what this all means. Well, you've been watching a BBC News special. And there's continuing political coverage throughout the day on BBC News. Now let's join Joe Coburn for further analysis with Politics Live.